Oh, nice one, Enos. The Future of Raid Encounter Designs Part 2 of the 11.2 interview. Sick. And we got Drew, we got Taylor. Hi, Taylor. Looking back on Undermine, Mythic, Muggsy, and Galliwix were a little backwards in terms of difficulty. That's one way of putting it. But the final fight of the raid has been really well received outside of the race to World First. Not according to my friends. I mean, that might be one way of putting it, but not according to my friends that have been communicating with me over the past few months. When coming up with the Mythic changes, they want to offer new mechanics, new challenges, and ideally reward players with something they haven't seen before. In the case of Galley, that was reorganizing the phases to rearrange the puzzle. Yeah, Liquid smashed that. They solved that puzzle super fast. Starting in his mech and flipping the encounter on its head, some fights can be entirely pre-planned, but they also want to encourage a little bit of on-the-fly decision-making. But not all difficulty is really created the same. Mechanical checks are still going to be an important part of WoW raiding, but how much time players are given to execute mechanics in Maniforge Omega is something they're paying a lot of attention to. Okay. I mean, the prediction is out there. Some of these Race to World First, especially as they reduce add-on usage in the game, is going to be really scuff. There's going to be some wild shit going on in the next few raids. Finally, although they are not giving much away about the raid itself, the team is excited to see how players will react to Demencius. Don't sell me on it. How do you view Mythic Galliwix's overall difficulty in hindsight? The race found it kind of disappointing from a throughput perspective, but from a mechanical perspective, a lot of the guilds getting there now, the feedback has largely been positive as the fight to progress. Yeah, so the Race to World First, I think aside, these are generally really dedicated folks, and it's a small group of our players. I think feedback has largely been positive on the difficulty, as you say. Galley, mechanically, I think is a great fight. It's very spectacular. Okay. From a narrative perspective as well, it's a great fitting and for one of WoW's most iconic and persistent villains across its history. From a difficulty perspective, I think where it's landed for the general community is reasonable. I think where we may have done things a little differently in hindsight is its difficulty relative to the boss preceding it. Muggsy was very difficult, and it was fairly unprecedented in modern WoW that the penultimate boss and the final boss were so close together in difficulty. So I'd have liked a little bit of a bigger of a gap there between the two encounters. But Mythic Galley, I think ultimately was a great fight for the vast majority. It was. Like, I don't disagree with this, to be clear. I really don't. It's just that its place in the raid, and compared to the things that came before it, made no sense. It was like we... I would put it this way. It's like we got the version of Mythic Galliwix after multiple nerfs. That make more sense? It's like we got the version that was designed for everybody, but the bosses preceding that were not that, which is not the way it should be. Do you know what I mean? My guild had more trouble with Muggsy than we did with Galley. With Galley then Muggsy. What, phase 1 turns? I think ultimately it was a great fight. I don't think the race is dead. It really comes down to how they tune it. This 8 boss thing, I think, is an uphill battle, though. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, P1 Galley is actually very, very complicated. For sure. P1 Galley is very complicated. I wish I'd seen more of it, but Liquid had already solved it by the time Echo got there, unfortunately, so they just fucking killed it. And, yeah, that was that. We saw Mythic Galley had a completely different design compared to the heroic encounter and was also almost completely secret. What was the goal? So anytime we get to designing the Mythic version of an end boss, we always bounce around the idea of what can we offer our highest echelon of raiding players, something that is new from the lower typical versions of the encounter. We want that to be both a challenge. These are players who have devoted a huge amount of time and resources to get to the end game of this game mode, but also as a reward. You're there to see something new that a lot of players don't get the chance to see through your skill and dedication to the game. So it's a great opportunity to be able to offer players something that's kind of new and jaw-dropping right when they get to that threshold of the mythic in the boss for the first time. The reorganization of the phase for Galley getting into his mech early and the mythic version of the encounter is a way where we can use some of those existing elements of the encounter and rearrange the puzzle, so to speak, so that players have to immediately recognize new strategies or a new approach to the encounter, So anywhere where we can use existing elements and aspects of the encounter and just immediately flip things on its head, require players to come in, tackle things from a new perspective, is always an opportunity we jump at for Mythic and bosses. That was a lot of words for not an answer. Impressive. It's like Ian wrote it. That's awesome. That was so many words to say nothing much. I also think yeah, this might be a sign of things to come. I was talking to Just Wait about this last week, especially with the reduction of add-ons. It might be, although I don't want it to go that way because it would have a negative effect on the race, and I don't think it's there yet. But if they're aiming to be more problem-solving design-wise, instead of, you know, throughput being a major element, we could be looking at, like, really short races. Because these guys, Liquid, Echoes, Methods of the world, they have so many big brains in and outside of the raid that are able to look at, you know, 20 different perspectives of a situation and solve the puzzle very, very quickly, that it might just not be a challenge for those guys at all. It'll be better for the wider community, though. It would be better for the wider community, although their puzzles will always be solved by someone else first. Like, you don't want raiding to turn into copying someone's Sudoku numbers. Very much like FF14. Yeah, very, very much like FF14. It's like the solution is solved and you just have to recreate the solution. Which can be difficult, but obviously in 14 you're not going to get like what the WoW race holds. I wonder if they're going to push towards that kind of idea, though. They'll have to, if they want to go that way, though, they really need to work on their environments. Because they haven't utilized that element enough. And I'm talking about, like, you know, a number of FF14 encounters do things with the background, ever-changing elements and clues and strategies that are actually dealt with via some sort of object or environmental change that's happening that you need to pay attention to outside of things to give variability. So you really, they're not great at that with their current animation technique in the game. Not Hellier Waves. No, I'm thinking more of like Shiva's reflective mirrors. Obviously, if you're a WoW player, you might not know what I'm talking about. But if you talk about Shiva mirrors, which dictate pathing and the next sequence of events, and it's also variable, things like that, where you're having to pay. Or what was the boss that actually had the playing cards in the order? Do you know what I'm talking about? That kind of situation, where you're literally monitoring all the different scenarios that are being played off around you while the encounter's going on, to try and give some information like that. Like right now, WoW doesn't utilize that enough, although the Dimensius maybe is going to show some of that given his size and environment that he seems to be fighting in, that big platform. I mean, Dimensius looks like a 14 encounter. One of the things that we had between different bosses in Liberation of Undermine was encounters that randomly assigned things such as Styx or Sprocket versus encounters that were pre-assigned like Galley. What did you learn about having these different types of mechanics? We've had that for a long time. Are there plans to lean one way or the other? It's an interesting question. I could talk about this for a very long time. I think a great raid has a mix. Yeah. A core part of rating gameplay in WoW is the ability to continue tackling a challenge and through collaboration, planning, and strategy, improve at that challenge as a team. It's one of the few things where you can get together with 19 or up to 29 other friends and really come up with a strategy sitting around the boss looking at your raid ahead of time and feel like you can have the fruits of that labor. But that being said, we also want elements in the accounts that require a little bit of on-the-fly decision-making. Yeah. Actually, we talked about this recently with Lies of P, where they gave some... if you didn't see that TDP, we brought this discussion up. There's good discussion in the comment section as well. About bosses that have far too many mechanics that they can pull from, and you end up with wildly different difficulties of the same boss. Because depending on what spells they use, especially when they're not in a deterministic order, is you just end up with either really, really easy version of the same boss or a really hard version, depending on which spells they decided to choose. And that can be very frustrating because you can't plan around it and you can't adapt around it. You just end up with... You can't have too many mechanics. It doesn't work, especially if the boss isn't on a set timer. Like, spell queuing is a different thing, but you get the idea. We're going to continue to embrace both types and strike the right balance. Yeah, that's fine. Just pull till you get a good pattern. Well, this was the prime example of WoW would be Omnitron Defense System, where the order of starting robots was random, and so you pull and reset until it started with the arcane one, I think. I can't remember what we ended up doing, but you just pull and reset the boss over and over again because it gave you a significantly easier time than doing it in any other way. You could also argue Galley was like that, although that was pretty deterministic, because starting on the other side just made the fight so much harder, it was pointless. We saw dungeon complexity difficulty decrease last season, which led to a lot of players seemingly having more fun. Shockingly, yeah. When people got to have a more fun time. We've seen a lot of feedback from Mythic guilds that Mythic Raid has been getting harder and harder and less fun due to the ever-increasing complexity. There are plans to do a complexity decrease. Yeah, we were listening, of course, to all the feedback that came from Season 2. We're really glad that players enjoy their time in M+. The companion to that, of course, is Mythic Raiding. And there's probably some room to pull back a bit on difficulty in Season 3. But not all difficulty is created the same. There's difficulty that can come from your ability to control your character, dodge lasers, pick up bombs, carry them, etc. There's difficulty that can come from how much time and effort you've dedicated to your character and your gear. There's difficulty that can come from how good your strategy and your ability to collaborate with other players is. I think we may try to pull back slightly on the first of those. Okay, so dodging and picking up bombs and moving stuff. Okay. Okay. The twitchiness of gameplay. That I think is a place where we'd like to take raiding overall in the future, is a place that's a little bit more about strategy and your ability to play your character at a very high level. That doesn't mean the types of gameplay that we've all known and loved from even back in Naxxramas, like the Heigen dance, that's the classic WoW mechanic, and stuff like that isn't going anywhere. But I do think over the last couple of expansions, we've probably trended a little bit too far into the dodge mechanic. And all of our difficulty, or the lion's share of our difficulty, is coming from that style of mechanic. So I don't think there's a major philosophical shift, but it's something we're keeping in mind as we're going into Koresh. I do agree with what Ian said on this, is like the WoW classes aren't generally designed to be played on the move. And if you just fill if you make it like the beaches of Normandy all the time, it's just less fun to play your character because you're constantly having to shift and move and fucking wiggle all the time. Although it does create, obviously, a large separation in skill. But depending on class, some classes are just way naturally better at it than others. So I don't mind that too much in principle. Yeah, there's nothing worse. Like, I'm ramping. Oh my god, yeah. Having to, like, literally, like, bop or protect a Disc Priest during a major mechanic because they get targeted with something where they're ramping is just horrible, right? It's just like, this is the worst feeling ever. Anybody who's played Dis in a raid will know that feeling of, like, this is my ramp, and if I get targeted, you guys need to fucking give me a blessing or something because I ain't going anywhere. Or Shadow Priest. Yeah, exactly. So I don't mind that. It allows you to play your character a bit more. Although, the counter to that is being rooted in place and shooting a training dummy is not fun either. So, a bit of a balance. A little bit less, right? This needs baby steps. This needs baby steps. You want to drag it back a little bit, but not to the point where you're like, okay, so I stand here and shoot this thing, and then it'll die later on. That's not too fun either. It seems that some mechanics don't give players enough time. Like for sprocket mines, you had to space them almost perfectly apart before the mechanic came in, and blew you up. And similarly with Mugsy jails, or stick scrapmasters before the nerf. Players have shown that if you give them enough time, they will solve it naturally, such as the galley bombs. So what is your goal with the raid difficulty in 11.2? I mean, surely a mix. You need some things that have a sense of urgency, and some things that are more controlled by the players. Before the add-on change takes effect, do you want to give players more time there? We call this concept affordance. So when a mechanic goes out, we want to make sure that players have not only the right amount of time, but the right amount of visual and audio cues in order to respond to a mechanic. There are probably a couple of places in 11.1 where we could have given more affordance for players to respond to, because as you mentioned in your question, where players don't feel they have the apt ability to respond to that and the right affordance for a mechanic, they will lean on weak auras or using add-ons for that type of response. So something that's very top of mind for us, especially coming off the back of a couple of very twitchy fights in Undermine. So we're examining all those areas in Ghost of Crush. I've got to be honest, right? As somebody who loves raid history in WoW, this is giving me a bit of a half chub as to how they're going to bend and mold and shape this. It's so easy for them to fuck this up. This is so easy to break what people love. And a couple of really bad tiers of raiding can kill entire guilds very, very quickly. Like swathes of guilds. They have to be so delicate here. I mean, really delicate. I don't think people mind having a relatively easy tier every now and again. And it's like you get that bit more of a break. You get to chill. You get a little bit of natural time off from your normal WoW schedule, especially if you're balls deep into WoW and it's your only game. You get that little break, and then you have a hard tier to push. This has got to be so delicate, man. So delicate. If you make mechanics where you just aren't threatened, you know, like Galley P2, where it's like you have 15, 20 seconds between things that are threatening, like, eh. If you're half awake, you're kind of fine, right? So examining all those areas in Ghosts of Koresh and making sure that for Omega, which is the raid that'll be coming, we'll pay close attention to that. Yes, we're streaming the live letter tomorrow. We'll see what new raiding FF has on offer. That's awesome. I know you guys have been responding to feedback well with Brood Twister in Nerebar. That was a private aura at the start and everyone was like, oh, Jesus Christ. And then you guys fixed that. Oh, really? How did they fix this? What did they change on Brood Twister? What did they change? I didn't know they changed it. What did they do? No, Tuesday. We just had the new WoW raid. Which job is getting going? I bet it's Ninja. Does anyone know what they changed on Brood Twister? Because we did it very early. So I don't remember. I don't know what they could have changed. Oh, did they make something with the assignments of who was getting targeted by the eggs? Not sure we had a private aura for dispelling the webs, but nothing else. Parasite fixate? I don't know. Yeah, the X circle was a private aura, so I guess they changed that in some way. Okay. In cases like that, I think Ian has spoke to this in past interviews, but we've often found that private auras can be worse than the problem we're trying to solve. Yeah. I mean, isn't the message we've got now that private auras are just dead? They're just not doing that again. Wasn't that what Ian said? It's like the whole idea of the private aura thing is just fucking gone. They're just not doing it anymore. I think some of our philosophy there has evolved over time. Listening to player feedback and just understanding when these things hit the live servers. How players are interacting with them. Private auras were always an experiment in trying to get raids to a point where they're more interactive. Where players are making those decisions and we're moving away from that computational add-ons. And I think we've learned a lot over the last couple of years, especially of raiding, about how and when to use those effectively and making sure we're not exacerbating an already difficult problem. We haven't really explored the communication or information asymmetry mechanics that are relatively prevalent in other encounters, such as Mechatalk colors. Yeah, we talked about that. These mechanics technically wouldn't need add-ons, so are there plans to use these types of explore these types of mechanics again? The short answer is absolutely. I think in the future, as Ian spoke about, as we move away from add-ons that can help with in-combat computational problem solving, it opens up a big space for us to do that. This is again calling back to classic raids. We've had these types of problems in WoW for a very long time, back to the days of Prophet Scarab in AQ40. And that's a really cool problem space that in part we haven't been able to explore for a while because of the effect of add-ons in combat. This is good. I, for one, am looking forward to one day when we can get back to a little bit more of those. And there's probably more we can do in the meantime as well. So we're going to keep looking for opportunities to make those times unique mechanics. This is exciting. I want to add a little bit of what Taylor has to say. I think another good call out here specifically is that these feel like raid mechanics where you're going to spend a couple of pulls with your friends and we kind of want you in there communicating. It's probably something we could do less in a dungeon. I'll cite an example actually with Tazavesh coming back. We're moving the Codebreaker boss Hildebrand. This is an example of the kind of mechanic you're talking about, and that's moving to the hard mode version of the mechanic where we expect you to be a coordinated group in the M+ experience. With pugs, might not have something like that to alter the mechanic. Do you know what actually a good example of this was? And I can't remember the fucking name of it. Dernsby might know. What was the worm? No, it was a bug. in the Nyalotha raid that duplicated itself across the room. And you had to figure out which one was the real one. It wasn't a hard boss, but that was kind of fun. Was it Drestagath? Drestagath. Skitra? So it might just be... so it might just show the code the entire time to everybody. Oh, hang on. The code to everybody. Yeah, in that setting, and when we want a coordinated group where you're with a trusted group of friends, you're kind of signing up for maybe multiple attempts at a boss. That's a more appropriate space for this kind of mechanic. So we're open to doing more of this, but that doesn't mean we're going to do it everywhere. Good. All right, now to the new raid then. Do you feel the future of raiding relies more on throughput checks like Bandit or mechanical checks like Gallywix? So we touched on it earlier. Maybe I'm taking the easy way out here, but the short answer is both. No, that's correct. Improving your character, gaining better loot, coming back the next week, having put in the effort throughout the game is going to be a core part of WoW for a long time. Good, as it should be. That's really the core and the heart of what we love about a season of WoW. Mechanical checks will still be something in WoW for a long time. So I think dividing it into that area that we talked about earlier of dodgy agility type mechanics and also strategic mechanics that you can plan ahead for a little bit and tackle as a team. We're planning to lean a little bit more towards the latter and less towards the former going forward. So that's probably how I would divide that and talk about our future plans for how we're planning to tackle difficulty in raids. We are going to see some very FF-inspired raid encounters, guys. This is going to be like we stand here. I wonder if they'll go as far as to make immune bosses while you deal with some complex movement. Or they will lean maybe more towards the Illidan phase and kill Jaden, where the boss is gone, but you're still getting to kill things, but also doing a very difficult dance. WoW players hate immune bosses, which is why you can... As long as... I mean, WoW players, including myself here, are a lot like monkeys. As long as we have something that's resembling a banana to smash, we're kind of happy. So if the boss disappears, but I can still sort of beat something up, I'm all good. I'm fine. Just give me something to fucking fidget with and I'm alright. Like, I only get fed up in the same encounter of Kill Jaden. The knockback shit, for those of you who did KJ, where you just stood on the platform and got knocked around, was terrible. But the Illidan phase, where you had to find the hidden enemies and DPS them, that was fun. That was fun. That would be cool. I would definitely like to see more leaning on that kind of stuff, where we're actually overcoming some sort of challenge in that way. Aren't WoW players supposed to be boomers? It sounds like a Zoomer take of you. I'm a caveman at heart, dude. Like, I didn't like farm M+ and open all these vaults to get my big giant club to not smack someone over the head with it. That's why I did it. That's why I did it. So if you say I can't bash with club, I get very angry and preach mad, preach angry now, preach want smash things. But it doesn't have to be the boss as long as there's something to do. I also think it, from a genuine perspective, it encourages people to get involved with those mechanics because your DPS overall suffers if you're not killing things. So you're genuinely incentivized to go and find the hidden enemy in the clouds, in the shadows, because your damage will go up over the guy who doesn't do that. Thumbs up. We're planning to lean a little bit more towards that and less towards the format. Yeah, that being said, this isn't binary. A really good encounter and a large and really good raid has all types of different difficulties. Yeah, of course. We're all blessed to have all kinds of different raid encounters in every raid, and we want to make sure that we scratch every itch, that we offer all kinds of different difficulty for players. Yeah, sure. Number go up. There's nothing more incentivized for WoW players than making number go up. If you want people... Like, that's why we hate line of sight mechanics. It's fucking shit. I'm just hiding. Like, what's fun about this? Like, you look at Ashara, you look at the jailer. What's fun about standing behind a pillar? Like, what the hell? Are there any plans to change the way the Mythic Raid lockout works? No. We would love to hear feedback on how players think the Mythic Raid lockout is working for them, but messing with Mythic Raid lockout is a delicate thing. Communities really form the heart of WoW, and messing with something as a core to how people schedule their weeks or schedule their social groups. That's something we want to do deliberately. What do you guys feel about this? If you need one more Mythic boss because you sat out, on an early boss for whatever reason, and now your vault's kind of fucked and missing one option. At this point, I don't give a shit about the Race to World First teams because they will abuse anything. Like, literally, if you've ever talked to any of the Race to World First raiders, if they got told they had to beat a puppy to death to get an item level, they would beat that shit to death. Like, fuck those guys. I'm thinking about your day-to-day Mythic Raiding Guild. You've missed a couple of bosses, or easy bosses, right? Technically, you didn't need loot for them or whatever. Whatever the reason is, you missed a couple of easy bosses that week, but you can't. The lockout's done, so you can't go get in there, right? That kind of shit, right? Your vault's fucked, and you even risk then falling behind because the people who did the whole raid, like, just got better prime loot out of their fucking vaults or whatever. Would you prefer the ability to dip in? It also makes locking out feel so bad. Well, I know a lot of raiders who refuse to bench themselves for bosses because they wanted their vaults. They need to change to work like heroic. It's not a social problem at this point. Nobody is running Mythic Pugs instead of Mythic Raid Guild, and they have the option. If they're a Mythic Raiding Guild, they're not pugging Mythic and vice versa. I kind of agree. Yeah, I kind of agree. There's obviously a lot of nuance to it. Farming and... I mean, what we're seeing now, I can't remember who showed it me, but that I don't know who that Asian guild is that's literally just moving realm to realm and clearing. They're selling Hall of Fame, and it's the same players. Just doing it every week. But again, that's more of a Blizzard monitoring problem. Like in WoW, especially, they're gonna find ways of abusing every single thing you give them to do some of this. Yeah, it's fucking lunacy how much people will abuse those systems. And it can be tracked and monitored. But you're right, Mythic Raider Guilds could do an alt Mythic Raid if they wanted to. Right? I'm not sure what the cutoff these days is that Mythic Raiders don't have at least 2 raid ready characters. It's got to be probably, what, in the 400s maybe? That might be a bit out of touch these days, I don't know. But I know when we were raiding during WoD, when we went to like a World 400 guild for a while, everybody had a raid ready alt. It was just normal. Like, you could have easily done it. Gone and killed a couple of bosses or whatever to help people get their extra vaults. What are you most excited for? Yeah, only needed 1 character, but did everybody have 2? Is what I'm saying, Nahe. Right? Like, in our World 400th guild only needed 1 character. Everybody had 2, though. Because they liked playing the game. Tax had 2, rest was slacking. Yeah, I slacked towards the end. I did not keep my characters up to date towards the end of BFA. I stopped doing it. I was like, I'm fucking done. I'm certainly not competing with cunt multi-boxers anymore. And farming islands on multiple characters. That's not happening. Best thing about next patch is the lean emote. Big important stuff. I assume Heroic Week's not coming back. They just said the raid was coming out all at once again. Ugh. Yeah, no Heroic Week. Well, he mentioned in the interview is like the raid will, and if Mythic Plus is coming, then they're doing it there. They've undone your damage. What does this mean?